Hi everyone, this is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest, with a special message as we approach the Christmas season. This past year, the StarQuest network has continued to expand our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture through our many entertaining and informative programs. Now we need your generous financial support to reach new audiences with more of the life-changing and uplifting programming we've been creating for more than a decade. That's why it's very important that we hear from you this Advent and Christmas, the time when nonprofits receive most of their support for the year. If you are already a supporter of StarQuest, we thank you and ask you to prayerfully consider increasing your support at this time. If you're not yet a supporter, please become one now. Every gift counts. Could you give $15 or even just $10 per month? Whatever level of support you can offer, please show your support for SQPN this Christmas. And remember that your gifts may be tax deductible. Just go to sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. May God bless you this Advent, and may you have a blessed Christmas season. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing Chapter 5 of this season, called Survivors of the Flux. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, be sure to write an Apple Podcast review. Take a moment and go on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from and write a review of the show. Nice 5-star review helps us grow our audience and reach more listeners. Also, please share the podcast with your Doctor Who loving friends. We would really, really appreciate that. Stick around to the end of the episode. We're going to have some great listener feedback on our previous episodes. And I want to tell you about another show that's on the StarQuest network that I'm sure you'll enjoy, called The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss everything about technology news from a particularly Catholic perspective. Father Cory joins me on that for several times a month. And so check it out. It's at wherever you get fine podcasts or at sqpn.com/technology.
Let me know when you do the episode on reversing the neutron flow.
Yes, and the polarity.
Exactly.
Reversing polarity as well. Yep.
Well, polarity is easier to do. Technically, there is a way to reverse neutron flow, but it's not what you think.
That sounds like a tangent, which I will avoid at this moment, but I want to really talk about that at some point. But let's talk about Survivors of the Flux. Jimmy, can you give us a recap?
Okay, spoilers ahoy. Last time on Doctor Who, the Doctor was recalled to the division and she turned into a weeping angel. This time, the Doctor immediately turns back into a human because, as we conjectured last time, she was only being turned into an angel so she could be transported to the division. Turns out the division is headquartered in a space station between universes. And there, the Doctor meets the old woman from a few episodes ago, who turns out to be Tectayun, her foster mother who found her as a child and raised her on Gallifrey. Tectayun is the current head of the division, and she explains that it started on Gallifrey but has since expanded to multi-universal scale. She also says that when the Doctor left the division, and when Tectayun had her memories wiped, so Tectayun was responsible for that, they effectively released the Doctor as a virus in their experiment. She thought they could control the Doctor, but they couldn't. Once the Doctor learned what the division had done to her, she never stopped searching for them, which allowed the possibility that they'd be exposed. To stop this exposure, they've released the Flux to destroy the universe and propel them to the next one. Tectayun offers the Doctor a Luke, I am your mother deal and offers her memories back with a chance to explore the next universe, which is possibly where she came from. Tectayun even offers to let the Doctor let Earth survive the Flux so the Doctor's friends will be okay. But the Doctor says, no, that's impossible. Meanwhile, in 1904, Yaz, Dan, and Professor Jericho have a world-spanning Macguffin adventure and meet Joseph Williamson, who reveals he has built his tunnels to help save mankind and that he has a set of doorways to other worlds and times. Meanwhile, through the course of the 20th century, we see the Great Serpent from a few episodes ago on Earth, where he manipulates and kills people in the history of UNIT, trying to rise to its top. The Great Serpent also has agents scattered throughout Earth's history who have serpent tattoos on their arms. Meanwhile, in 2021, the Lupari shield around Earth is starting to crack, and Carvanista decides to repair it by pulling in a missing Lupari ship which happens to have Bell on board. Meanwhile, Vendor arrives at a remote space facility where Swarm and Azure are disintegrating people from the passenger forms and absorbing their energy for an unknown purpose. Vendor also gets sucked into a passenger form where he meets Dan's girlfriend, Diane. Meanwhile, in 2021, the Great Serpent betrays the Earth to the Centaurons, who began attacking the Lupari shield. Meanwhile, Swarm and Azure use the energy from their victims to transport themselves to Division headquarters to get vengeance on those who imprisoned them so long ago. Swarm disintegrates Tecteun and then turns to deal with the Doctor, giving us our latest cliffhanger, the end.
Meanwhile,
Meanwhile, everybody's confused. No.
There are a lot of threads. I count like at least four separate plot threads in this episode, maybe 5, depending on how you count them. It is, as my wife said, I'm very confused.
I wasn't confused. I actually enjoyed this episode a lot. Yeah. I was glad for summarizing purposes when I realized that the thread tracking Dan and Yaz was really just a MacGuffin hunt.
Yeah.
And all I needed to say was they go across the world and they end up meeting Josephson.
Right.
Similarly, all the stuff going on with the Great Serpent is, he's killing people to try to rise to the top of the unit, and then he betrays us to the Centaurons.
Yeah, I had a feeling that at several points in this episode, we can talk about it as we get to them, that they were kind of, we talked before how this was supposed to be an 80-episode season, and they would decrease it to 6 because of COVID. And it felt like there were certain places where, that's where we contracted. That's where there should have been more exposition or more something in order to not have this feel like a mad dash down a hallway.
Yeah. Other things that they may have let breathe if they had more episodes this season is Dan's relationship with the Doctor, because a lot of fans have pointed out he has spent almost no time in the Doctor's presence, and yet he's a companion.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And one thing that's kind of a hope is Big Finish is already taking notes on how they're going to fill the 3 years between where Dan and Yaz ended up at in 1901 and 1904 when they're doing the MacGuffin hunt.
I would like to see Dan and Yaz and Professor Jericho adventures. That could be fun. I like Professor Jericho.
There could be a lot of fun there.
Yeah.
So.
We should probably define the term MacGuffin for people who may not be familiar with it. It's a term that Alfred Hitchcock introduced. A MacGuffin is an object or thing. It's something. It doesn't have to be an object, but it's something that all of the characters in the story really care about, even though the audience doesn't. It's of significance inside the story, but it's not of direct real significance to the to people watching the story. And a classic example is the plans to the Death Star in Star Wars are the MacGuffin that motivates the plot. What happens to those plans is intensely interesting to the characters in the story, but not so much to the audience, except insofar as we like the characters. In this, Yaz and Dan and Professor Jericho are trying to find a date for like the Earth's final battle, and they get December 3rd or December 5th, which happens to be next Sunday. And guess what? The year is going to be 2021. So, we can infer what it is, but even without being told. But the only really significant thing, guess what? Next week on Doctor Who, there's going to be a big battle. Could have told you that. Didn't need to go to Mexico and Constantinople and Nepal and the Great Wall of China and all these other places just to figure that out.
Well, what a coincidence that they all happen to fall on a Sunday. All these Halloween and all these different dates.
It did kind of feel like, well, what are we going to do with these characters? Because they're trapped in the past, and somehow we've got to get them back connected with the Doctor and into the present, if not the future. So you got to do something.
Yeah. Right. And it was effectively, time-filling stuff, but I thought it was well done. I liked seeing their adventure. I mean, the first one where they're in a temple in Mexico, like an Aztec or Mayan temple or something, is reminiscent of Indiana Jones, only it's played more for comedy.
Yeah, that was funny.
And it's always fun, or frequently fun, to go to Constantinople during the late Ottoman Empire, and you're in a souk, a bazaar, and you're consulting people who know strange mystic things, and that can be fun. Although, safety tip. If you are in Constantinople consulting people on mystic things and someone plants a bundle of dynamite next to where you are, do not waste your time putting blankets on top of the dynamite. That will not help.
Yeah. Maybe pull the fuse out, or, douse the fuse. Maybe that might be
nothing
effective.
Else run, but do not just waste time putting blankets on the dynamite, which is what Yaz does.
Maybe they're Kevlar blankets. I don't know. So that actually raises a question for me. Last time on the Village of the Angels, they were stuck in this little quantum pocket or whatever.
In space.
How'd they get away from there? Nobody knows, or nobody said.
Nobody said. Now, we could infer from the previous episode that even though the village was taken to space in 1904, it was eventually returned because it was found empty.
Yeah.
And so presumably they were just there at the moment of return and left, which is part of why it was found empty.
I guess, yeah.
Because that happened in 67 as well, both 1901 and 1607, or 1967, it did the vanish and come back routine.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess, yeah. I felt like that was another one of those things where
they should have closed the loop better than they did.
If they had another 2 episodes, they would have done more with that. So I did enjoy that. The adventure on board the ship and getting attacked by the steward and Jericho.
I love Dan. Dan gets a great line where he's wrestling with the snake agent. The guy, they found a snake tattoo on him after he died. So so he's one of the Great Serpent's agents on Earth, who is apparently trying to stop Dan, Yaz, and Professor Jericho for reasons we don't understand. But when they're wrestling with him, Dan has a hold of his foot and threatens him with, "Answer the question or I'll break your toes." and normally you don't hear toe threatening in adventures. It's normally finger threatening maybe, but toe threatening was nice.
We get a moment on board the ship where Yaz is alone, and she pulls a hologram out of her pocket where the Doctor explains to her how they know to be looking for this date. Like the Doctor talking to her. It's reminiscent of Blink. Remember when the 10th Doctor talks to Sally Sparrow?
Sally Sparrow.
Yeah. And sort of has a conversation with her through the DVD, special features sort of thing, the Easter egg. And the Doctor does that again, except it's a little bit more like I'm anticipating, and hopefully you actually said that. Well, that I'm guessing that you said. Otherwise, this is a really weird conversation. but we have this explanation for how they know. And again, I think that's enough. Feel like that's another one of those things where we have to insert this so that because we had to decrease from 8 to 6, and so we've got this sort of exposition moment in this to kind of catch up the audience to why this is all going on.
Although really the main exposition occurs between universes. That's where we get tons of exposition.
Right.
In this case, go ahead.
I was just going to say what the Doctor does tell her is that the Earth is safe from the Flux because of Lupari's shield, but that all the great evil creatures are fleeing the Flux will be looking to make Earth their home, and thus that endangers Earth. They want Earth to be as their safe haven. Yeah.
There's also a moment in this that I've seen people comment in the fandom on where after Yaz has watched the Hollow Egg and she's sitting there sad, And that's when Jericho and Dan come back into the ship's cabin where she's been watching it. And they pick up on the fact she's sad, even though she says there's nothing wrong with her. And Dan just sits down with her to be a comforting presence. And I've seen it commented on how much better that plays than than a similar scene where we had Graham sit down next to Yaz to comfort her and starts talking about how amazing and marvelous she is when she hasn't done anything amazing or marvelous.
Right.
And just sitting down and being a nice person to be a comforting emotional present works much better than building false undeserved praise.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Exactly.
So there is also another fun moment where they're in Nepal and they encounter a guru on the top of the mountain, and he's teasing them. Which
this is no! Don't you're spoiling it.
Okay,
So-
sorry. I presume everyone's watched this, but okay.
They show up and this is like some mystic, that very famous mystic. We don't know who it is. It doesn't appear to be a real person, but it's some very famous mystic that Jericho has read about from 1967. So this guy has made the history books, and they show up. They've taken 4 days to get up this mountain, and the guy is he's seated there. You know, I don't know if he's in the lotus position technically or not, but he's seated there. They show up at his little tent, and he's sitting outside it, and he's been watching them come up the valley, and he's looking very serious and a little intimidating. And the first words out of his mouth are, "What took you so long? I've been watching you climb up this mountain for 4 days. You should take more exercise." And and then he wants to know the latest gossip, because as a hermit, he doesn't get gossip. So he says he'll take anything. And they say, well, the telephone has been invented. I'm a hermit. And so, well, we would have brought a newspaper if we had thought of it. You didn't bring one? And he asks, he just keeps, no matter what they say, he turns it so that they're digging themselves in deeper. He asks if they brought food or the latest Conan Doyle. And in fact, 1904 was a big year for Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories, because in the Strand magazine, Conan Doyle had just resurrected Sherlock Holmes after the Reichenbach Falls story, The Final Problem, which is it's one of the worst written stories, for reasons I'll go into another time. But he had just brought him back, and in 10 of the 12 months of 1904, the Strand published a brand new Sherlock Holmes story after an absence of years. And so people were agog with that. And then he explains that he doesn't get to tease people much, and so he's just teasing them. But he gives them his words of wisdom that he discerns psychically are awesome. Yeah. Because he tells them that they want to know what they need to do and stuff, and he says, "I have 3 words for you." And then he concentrates to discern what the words are. "Fetch your dog." And they're like, "What?" It's like, "I don't know. That's all I've got. Fetch your dog." And they think about it, and they realize Carvanista.
Right.
Yep. And so they go to the Great Wall of China, and they know Carvanista's in orbit in 2021. And so on the ground near the Great Wall, actually above and below the Great Wall, they paint on the ground, "Carvanista, Dan is here, 1904, fetch your human." And Carvanista in 2021 looks down and sees that and says, "I don't have time travel." It's awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, remarkable that it lasts for how many, over a century on the ground. That's a durable paint.
Good paint. Yeah, good paint. Must have been like latex paint or something.
That was a good scene. I like the hermit on the mountain. The whole thing was good.
It was a really nice comedic break.
Yep.
So I want to talk about the Doctor at Division last, because that's the most important thing in general. But let's talk about the Great Serpent, who also goes by Prentice, we first see him show up in England in 1958. We didn't talk about the trio in Liverpool. We'll come back to that in a second because that sort of has to do with the end. The Great Serpent shows up he's in England, 1958. He's skeet shooting with a guy who turns out to be a general.
I don't think that was skeet shooting. None of them said pull. I thought they were just hunting.
Oh, maybe
it
just
was bird hunting.
Sorry. Just shooting. Yeah, I think I supplied skeet. They're shooting for sport with a turns out to be a general who's been tasked with setting up unit, and the Great Serpent is asked, so what do you do? What do what is it you are good at or whatever? And he says, I'm how does he put it? I'm good. You're gonna it's gonna be hard to believe. Go ahead.
Yeah, he initially says that he can't really talk about what he's done because it's classified, and the general says, "Well, can you give me an indication of your general skill set?" And he says, "Well, it may be hard to believe, but I have been tasked with dealing, or I am a specialist in dealing with threats that are possibly not from this world." Right.
Yeah, that's how he puts it. And of course, the general says, "Oh, that's handy because I've been tasked with setting up unit for just that reason, and I feel like I'm out of my depth. So here, why don't you come help me do that?" So the Great Serpent is there at the beginning of unit, and there throughout its history. We see him again in a few years, 1967.
In 67, where unit has just stood up. They have just inducted a new corporal who is a shouter but effective, and that's a reference to Lethbridge Stewart,
who
was a
in fact, you hear his
67?
voice just briefly.
Yeah, but corporal in 67. That was a very quick promotion to brigadier within a few years.
Did it say corporal or colonel?
Oh, I thought it was corporal, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, I missed that, but yeah, you might be right. They might have said corporal instead of, because he was Colonel Lethbridge Stewart when you first meet him. The second Doctor.
I thought he was a lieutenant at that point. I could be mistaken on that. It's been a while since I've seen that episode.
Right.
But in any event, they name check Lethbridge Stewart, and they have an actor step briefly on screen who is lower ranking, and I think it may be meant to be him, even though we cut away too quick for him to get a line.
Right.
And you do hear him in the background. You do hear
actual Nicholas
Courtney's voice, but it's probably, I think it was like a recording from an old episode way back when.
Yeah.
Also, they reference another old episode directly. This is 1967, and they allude to a story that took place in 1966 in the first Doctor called The War Machines, in which there was a threat from, war machines that were controlled by an AI in London. And so they apparently have just did not get stood up quite in time to deal with the war machines, which is why Unit didn't appear in that series.
Of course. But they also have the TARDIS there, which is from Spirit. Like, is this Spearhead from space? Is this?
No, they say they found it in this village. Meaning, so this is 1967, and that's the year everybody disappears from the village, and that's where we last saw the TARDIS. It was left in the village, and so they got it out of the village, and then they said that they're now turning that village into a military testing area so as not to panic the public because everyone there vanished.
So this is the 2021 Doctor's TARDIS, not a previous TARDIS. Okay.
Yes.
So it's presumably been left somewhere in a unit warehouse all that time until the Doctor comes back for it. And then
it in the Stargate from Antarctica. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the Grand Serpent ends up killing the general by having a serpent. Speaking of Stargate, having a serpent come out of him and then be reabsorbed into the Grand Serpent. So the Grand Serpent is not human.
He's gold. Oh, I mean.
So I wonder. I mean, so that's obviously where he gets his name, the Great Serpent. I wonder, is that, there's a question about, he was ruling Vinder and Bell's people. Is he one of their people? Is this a natural part of their, or has he made a deal with the devil, so to speak? And
I don't know the answers to those questions yet, but what it reminds me of. So we've already seen there may be a connection between Vinder's people and the Time Lords, because it may be that regeneration comes from them. Also, they may be preternaturally unaging, which is also characteristic of Time Lords. They age very slowly. But what that reminded me of, that image of, it's kind of a golden serpent, and it's not an earth snake. It's got additional doodads on it. But it suffocates people from the inside, and then when it's done suffocating them, it comes out of their mouth. And it then slinks up or crawls up the Great Serpent and merges into him. Yeah. And what that really reminded me of was the serpent-shaped death-morphant worm that the Master inhabited during the 1996 TV movie.
Sure.
Oh, that would be interesting. If they're pulling something from the Eighth Doctor, that would be I kind of would like to see them bring in something from that. That was, I mean, that would be good. So then we jump ahead to 1987, so another 20 years, where the Great Serpent is talking with some government official, and he wants to take over UNIT. So this guy is presumably in charge of UNIT from the civilian side.
He was the oversight committee. I think he was he was the head of the oversight committee, and the Grand Serpent wanted to take that over.
Right, and so he ends up killing him. So now he's in charge of UNIT, and then we jump ahead again to 2017. So another 30 years. Yeah, math is right. And now he's got Kate Lethbridge Stewart in the office, and he's telling her that they're winding down UNIT. But she, smart Kate that she is, recognizes who and what he is, calls him on it, says, I've inoculated myself against whatever influence you seem to have over others, so he can't do the snake thing to her. And then she goes home. He tries to blow her up with a bomb on her front door, and then she calls Osgood and tells Osgood, yay, Osgood, that she's going underground.
Yeah, it's not clear if she actually talks to Osgood, but she just says very quickly, Osgood, I have to go dark. And then she breaks her phone.
Yes.
Which is great, because that's what you want to do in that moment. You don't want them tracking you through that thing.
Right.
Presumably she's got burner phones stashed elsewhere she can use.
She seems like she's smart enough to prepare for such a thing. And then we end with the Great Serpent we find out he's made a deal with the Centaurons, who we remember were trying to take over Earth a few episodes ago, to leave Earth defenseless. And so they start coming through the doors, coming through everywhere at all points in time, but including the doors in the tunnels that Williamson has built. These time tunnels of some sort. And that's where our three Yaz, Dan, and Jericho have gone to Liverpool after he comes running out onto their cabin on the ship and disappearing. They decide to go find him in Liverpool, or his tunnels.
Yep.
Yeah, and and 1904 is after Williamson's life, but there are rumors that his ghost haunts the place, that it still walks the tunnels. And of course they realize it's not his ghost, it's really him. Yeah. It's still alive, but displaced in time. He's still walking through his tunnels, which he refers to as some kind of weird puzzle that he can't figure out, because he's got these doors connecting it to other times. And he says in particular, he says they've shifted. Where they lead to has shifted, and he doesn't know where they all lead to now. But they shifted apparently because of the flux. And he says in particular, never go through doorway number 9. And Jericho says, why not? And he says, instant death. That's persuasive. And so there we have a setup of Chekhov's doorway number 9. So we can expect doorway number 9 to be opened in episode 6.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the Chekhov's doorway number 9. And so that closes the loop, I think, on the Great Serpent's thread. There isn't much to say about Vinder and Bell. I mean, you've kind of said it all in the recap. There's
Carvanista hyperjacks Bell to recall her ship. Right. And I do like when her ship has reached Earth, he's talking to her on the radio. He knows she's not a Lupar. And he tells her, I'm giving you the count till the count of 1 before I come on board. 1. Which was very nice.
Yes, that was good.
No, one thing with Belle before she was warped away, we have one of these near miss routines with her and Vinder because she is about to go check out this place where Azure and Swarm are doing the human, we're turning you into giant batteries thing. And just as she's about to land, she gets warped away. And then Vinder, like immediately after, does some like a temporal jump or whatever to this place.
Yeah, I know. It's almost like he's using a vortex manipulator, but it looks different.
Yep.
So at this place where they almost meet, it's this creepy looking space station thing. Kind of looks like a giant claw. But more rotated 3D than that. And they're taking people out of the passenger forms and converting them into some kind of energy that they can use to feed the time force. They also, even though the people who they've taken out of the passenger forms are standing there like zombies because they're zombies at this point. Swarm has given them this speech talking to them about like, you guys are all space and we, meaning Azure and me, are time. And we're going to take your energy and do stuff with it, which will grow the time force. And why they need people for this, I have no clue. Because it's like, look, you're disintegrating these people and using them to charge some kind of machine. Can't you do that with regular matter? Why does it have to be living matter? Why does it have to be living human matter?
Right.
You know? So
and he's monologuing.
and he's monologuing, but no capes. They then meet him face to face, Vinder face to face, and he puts him in a passenger form, and immediately upon entering the passenger form, which is a kind of inside, at least where Vinder is, it looks kind of like there's marble Greek inspired architecture there with a kind of fantasy wasteland background. And he immediately meets Diane from Liverpool, whose first line is amazingly refreshing for someone on Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who. At last, someone with a gun.
Yes.
And she's very clearly unhappy, and she aims to misbehave.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, and Vinder seems to indicate that he intentionally wanted to be captured inside. Like he's got a plan. He didn't just stumble in and get, captured. Oh no, now, woe was me. He had a plan to get captured by passenger, and he's got something he's going to do. So it'd be interesting to see that, where that goes with that. All right, let's talk about the big plot line, the major plot line of questions concerning the Doctor. So in the transport, the Angel transport, which is like worst flight ever, she's surrounded by probably thousands or millions of angels. I mean, it's just this vast to the horizon of angels who don't respond to her at all. And she does this whole thing like, I'm blinking, come on, hello. And she taps on one, which is kind of funny.
Eventually they do talk back to her telepathically. Yeah.
Was that Jodie Whittaker's voice, or was that another actress? It kind of sounded a little bit like her voice.
I don't know.
It might. The credits list 3 other women, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the TARDIS Wiki shows 3 other people.
Okay. So they do say something interesting. We are conversion. We are transport. That's their line to her there.
And the conversion is, the Doctor later figures out, is conversion to a form of matter that can exist between universes.
Right. Because when she comes out of that, she's in division headquarters and is presented with an Ood who puts a pin on her. That's a conversion panel, I think he says, something along those lines.
It's like some kind of thing to stabilize her now that she's between universes.
Right. And so don't take it off. And that's where she runs into Awkwafina or Ossock. I can never remember.
So here's the thing. I have watched a whole bunch of different videos from different Doctor Who fans who talk about Ossock, which is the character's name as listed in the credits. Now, it turns out that was just misdirection, apparently, because this is Tecteun. And they just didn't want that reveal spoiled. So fine. They call her Awsok, A-W-S-O-K, in the credits. Perfectly straightforward, easily pronounceable name. Aw for the A-W, Sock for the S-O-K, Awsok. So why have I seen multiple Doctor Who fans commenting on YouTube repeatedly referring to her as Aswok? Dudes, read it. If you're going to talk about it, I mean, I have to check things for this show. Check things, make sure you're right. It's one thing if something occurs to you on the fly, but if you know you're going to talk about this character, and if in fact in your incredibly inaccurate fan theory videos, you've been talking about this character for weeks, learn her name.
Well, we got to be careful about throwing stones because we've had some characters that we've pronounced and sometimes mispronounced on purpose. But that's the thing too. So. On purpose.
So I call her Awkwafina because when I'm watching this and I'm taking my notes, I couldn't for the life of me remember what the character's name was, and I'm like, it's Aw something, and I remember watching Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, so I'm like, I'll just write Awkwafina and I'll come back and fix that later.
Yeah.
Once I've looked it up.
If I were going to do something along those lines, I would be tempted to call her Aquanetta, which was the actual stage name of an actress back in the 1950s. They thought Aquanetta sounded exotic and didn't think it sounded like a hairspray that all the women would have known.
Yeah, right. All right. So she's introduced to Ossock, who we'll find is Tecteun, her foster mother, who found her as presumably a foundling, although the Doctor disputes that. The Doctor, there's this, once Tecteun does the reveal on who she is, the Doctor is resentful. By the way, I like the kind of she's sort of a stern mother, but I like the motherly relationship that she has with the Doctor, even though she's an evil mother. She's an evil stepmother. Nevertheless, she has this motherly attitude. It's like, okay, I'm not taking your junk. Here's the deal. And she compliments her and says, you always work quick on the uptake and things like that. And she has, you don't often see the Doctor have this emotional dynamic with someone who can talk to her like they're a parent. Right.
And it's nice to see that. And I lost my train of thought.
I was going to mention just the environment that they're in, and maybe you can get your train of thought back while I talk about it. But they were on board this station or ship or whatever it is, and there's this giant tree that is above them, which reminded me a lot of the tree inside the TARDIS in the Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, which is an episode that we've talked about but has not yet been released. That is sort of this device for making, it's a replicator basically.
That tree. Okay. I was going, what tree are you thinking about? It's like,
the replicator tree. And I wonder if it's kind of just there. And I don't know if we're ever going to talk about this tree that's in the middle of everything, but it's very interesting that the environment that they're in.
And it one of the things that Tecteun says about, I got my train of thought back.
Good.
So Tecteun, the Doctor challenges Tecteun as being a kind of ungrateful child, saying, you took my lives away from me, you took me away, how do you know? And then she names a bunch of other possibilities other than her being abandoned at the site where she was found, because there was this wormhole and Tecteun didn't see her come through the wormhole. How do you know I wasn't meant to go through it?
Right.
How do you know the person who left me there hadn't just gone through it? How do you know they weren't coming back to pick me up? Bunches of options here. And so it's not clear that she came through this wormhole where she was found, which Tecteun later says leads to the second universe, to the next universe in sequence.
Right.
And Tecteun at that point in the episode says it's, that may be where you came from, and we could explore that and find out. And I went back and watched The Timeless Children. Mm-hmm. And guess who else is using, if maybe not for sure certain, that the Doctor came out of that wormhole language? The Master, as he's explaining all this. And so he's like, apparently having, Tecteun found the child abandoned, apparently by this, next to this wormhole to another unknown dimension or universe. And it's like, okay, Chibnall has been using misdirection from the beginning. The reason they're exploring all these possibilities is to warn the audience that the answer is very likely to be something other than the Doctor came from that universe, which supports the Bell and Vinder are her parents theory.
That kind of triggers a thought for me is we haven't seen hide nor hair of the Master in this season.
Unless he's masquerading as one of the people we have seen hide and hair of.
Exactly. I was going to say that maybe he's, we're setting, he is at the core of the whole timeless child question, which is at the core of this season. So how could we not address that? And the fact that he also resurrected the zombie Time Lords as zombie Cybermen. Right. That's all been kind of left hanging too.
I suspect the zombie Time Lord Cybermen will be back for the 100th anniversary special of the BBC that's going to come out late next year, where the Doctor regenerates, because apparently the Master's going to be involved in that.
Oh, okay. It'd be interesting to see him in this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and both Swarm and now the Great Serpent would be plausible ciphers for the Master.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that would be interesting. That would be interesting to see. So yeah, we'll have to. I'm kind of anticipating that in next time. So, but we'll get to that. One of the interesting lines that Tecteun explains what the division is. It started as a way. It began on Gallifrey as a way to safeguard the galaxy, where this peaceful, the Peace Corps of the galaxy, where and then of course, like all government bureaucracies, mission creep, and they grew to decide that we're not just going to safeguard the galaxy, we're going to direct events in the galaxy and the universe to the way we want it to be.
Just nudge things a little bit, a little this way, a little that way.
Right.
But and thus she says they've been recruiting from all universes and all races, but that doesn't really seem to fit with what they are portrayed as in this, which is like, okay, we've gotten out of our own universe. We're trying to propel ourselves towards this second universe, and we can see a bunch of universes beyond that. But it doesn't sound like they're in contact with a vast number of universes. So there's a little inconsistency there, which may just be bad writing.
Yep.
But sometimes they're using hyperbole when it clashes with the facts they're establishing.
Right.
But one of the things that occurred to me in the last few episodes is, like after they revealed Weeping Angels had been their recruits, and Lupars like Carbonista had been one of their recruits. Well, all the way back to where we first learned about the fugitive Doctor, who are they using? The Jadoon.
Yeah,
we're trying to bring the fugitive Doctor back to the division. And so, yeah, the division, we've seen from when the division was introduced, we've seen them using other races, or at least, because that actually is from the beginning of when we started to learn about them. We didn't know who they were yet, but we knew someone was using the Jadoon to try to get the Doctor. And we later learned that was the division.
The Tecteun says, like you said before in the recap, that the division let the Doctor loose into the universe like a virus. And she says something. She says morality was always your flaw. Yeah. It's a typical evil bureaucrat sort of thing to say.
Yeah, this is Crayola paint by numbers writing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They had wiped her memories, and they thought that would be enough. But Tecteun says that she knew if she ever learned what the division had done in taking away her memories, she would become obsessed and would keep looking for the division and might expose it, which is now exactly what's started to happen.
Yep.
And so, of course, the obvious solution is, at that point, is destroy the universe.
Right.
Exactly.
Rather than be exposed as a covert organization, you just destroy the universe.
And we're back to one of our frequent complaints of modern Who, which is everything has to be universe destroying stakes. Everything is giant.
I will say one thing that I do like about this, even though we do have universal stakes once again, and for a not very good reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people are going to, what's so terrible if they know about the division? Why is that so bad?
Right.
You know, I mean, are they going to torture you in the pit of, you know, whatever forever, or what? Why would this be so bad if people knew you'd been secretly nudging races and doing occasional covert ops? I mean, we know about here on Earth, the CIA and the KGB, and, you know, they don't want to destroy the world lest we know they exist.
Right.
So, so that doesn't make sense. But given that they're going to do a universe-destroying thing like the Flux, they've actually given it scope this time. In all the previous occasions where we've had, like, the Stolen Earth, the Pandorica opens in the Big Bang, even Logopolis, where they wipe out, like, I don't know, a third of the universe or something. Mm-hmm. We never see those parts. This is all other people's problems. Right. And here on Earth, it's like, okay, oh, guess what? Earth is, all the stars in the sky are simultaneously exploding throughout all of time, which makes no sense. and Earth is okay.
Yeah.
But all the rest of the universe is ended, and Earth is okay for now because it's the center of the storm. But eventually, but that gives us time to work on the problem. Okay. We've never seen the destruction of the rest of the universe before, but now we have. We've had Bell and Vendor going places and seeing the destruction and the survivors and the wars being fought over it. And for once, with a universe-destroying plot, they've actually given scope to that by showing us the rest of the universe instead of just telling us about it from the perspective of Earth.
Mm. Yeah, I wonder if Thanos worked for Division. Destroy half the universe. And Tecteun says, like we mentioned, they created the Flux because they were wary of the Doctor for giving people hope, quote unquote. And the Doctor,
so stupid.
Yeah. So the Doctor is mad that Tecteun denied her natural life, but Tecteun says, she comes back and says, well, you're no different. You jump into these your companions' lives, and you take them away from that, and you change their lives willy-nilly for your own purposes, and not always for the good of the companion, which is an interesting, criticism of the Doctor.
I like that turnabout.
Yeah.
I don't think it's analogous because, I mean, and frankly, the Doctor's being unreasonable. Because, I mean, imagine you're a human here on Earth in the early 21st century and you go to a park and there's a baby on a bench and nobody around.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Do you leave the baby on the bench there in hopes someone is going to come back for it? Or do you infer from the fact you have a vulnerable child left alone in a public place with nobody around that the child has been abandoned?
Right.
You're not going to leave that child there. You're going to take it somewhere that it can be cared for. And hopefully maybe you can one day reunite it with its parents, assuming they're competent to be reunited with it. But you're not leaving a baby on a bench, even if there's a wormhole next to the bench, perhaps especially if there's a wormhole next to the bench. Because you don't know that if something comes through the wormhole, it's going to be parents. It might be something much worse for the baby.
Turn to the wormhole. You drop something and toss the baby in. Yeah. I mean, you look for the parents, though. You don't just take off with the child. But
to the extent you can. Now, in our society, you take the baby to the authorities. The authorities would, do an investigation to try to find the parents. Here, this is for Tecteun. This is the early days of dangerous space travel off Gallifrey. So there are no star cops she can take the baby to.
Yeah.
So she's kind of got to, there's no, I mean, what she could do, and for all we know, she did do, was leave a message at the site and say, I found this abandoned baby and I took it to care for it. If it's yours, you can look me up. Here are the coordinates for Gallifrey.
Right. Presumably we'll never know now that she's been ashed by Azure or by Swarm, I mean.
Swarm.
Yeah. Yep. But we have another Chekhov's timepiece, a pocket watch, a chameleon arch, right? Is that what we call it?
Well, the arch is what turns you into the human. The fob watch is what holds the memories and releases them.
Okay. Right. So it's the watch that holds the memories that we've seen before. So of
course we know how the Doctor is going to get her memories back is through the watch.
Yes. And we see in the next time trailer the watch actually opening and spiraling out all of her memories. So she's getting them back.
Yes. But like I said, Swarm and Azure show up at Division headquarters and kill Tecteun. And then, as you said, Jimmy, turn to the Doctor and they're going to kill her. Or not.
Yeah, well, and the dialogue that Swarm has is deliberately vague. He turns to the Doctor and says, "And now for you."
Yeah.
But all they've said is they're going to take revenge, not kill them. And so their revenge on the Doctor may be giving her memories back of all the awful stuff she may have done for the Division.
Right. I mean, their beef is with the Division and the Doctor, so maybe it'd be enough to destroy the Division and leave the Doctor with her memories, and that would be that.
Well, and let's not forget, too, you talk about awful stuff that the Doctor did, but also what did Tecteun do to the Doctor in doing all her experiments to discover the regeneration.
True.
So there's going to be that floating out there as well.
And there's also a potential Chekhov's weeping angel here, because at one point Tecteun says that they had quantum stored the memories for a long time in the weeping angel they sent to hunt her down. But now they put him back in the watch. And she says, "Don't worry, that weeping angel has not escaped. We transported it too." And she shows him a hologram of it. So that would suggest the rogue weeping angel is going to have more to play in the story.
Maybe in helping save the Doctor, ironically, from Azure and Swarm.
Yeah.
So, Father Cory, any other notes on this episode?
One thing I wrote is, boy, that was a lot of build up for the Centaurn invasion. I mean, all this stuff just builds up to that. Right. But I kind of had a chuckle when, the Doctor being transported by Weeping Angel, and now U.S. airlines are trying to discover how to do this. So all they have to do is get you on the plane, turn you into a Weeping Angel, fly you there, land, turn you back human, and then they don't have to worry about, crew.
Yeah,
they can just have the pilot.
No in-flight meals.
Co-pilot. No in-flight meals.
Don't know if I want to get on that passenger form.
That's right. Jimmy, how about you?
So a few little notes. We also get a glimpse of the weird crooked house that the Doctor had a vision of a few episodes ago. So we got another glimpse of that in this episode, apparently connected with her memories.
Right.
To remind us that that's there. So we should get payoff on that next week. Ashok also, at least I said it right. Tecteun.
Yes.
Tecteun describes the ship that they're on, or the station that they're on, as her seed vault for the new universe, to preserve traces of what has been lost in the first universe. And I like that. That's nice. Although she is destroying the previous universe needlessly, at least she's taken some keepsakes. We also have a nice line or a nice exchange between the Doctor and the Ood, where the Doctor is trying to convince, in Tecteun's absence, the Doctor's trying to convince the Ood to help her by appealing to its knowledge of what's going on. And the Ood is like, "I can't help you. It's too late. Even if I wanted to, it's too late." And the Doctor says, "I'm really good at pulling rabbits out of hats." And the Ood says, "I have no rabbits. It's a metaphor. and I have no hats. Nice little exchange.
Yep.
A couple of other notes. One that I've been meaning to mention for a few episodes. So it's the opening credits that have been used since Jodie Whittaker's time, which are these. It's not the time vortex anymore. It's some swirling, mysterious something. And I find that intriguing. On the one hand, I like seeing the time vortex, which kind of went or what was clearly the time vortex, which actually kind of went back to the John Pertwee period. But before that, in the first and second Doctor's time, you did just have this chaotic video feedback thing that was happening on the screen during the opening credits. It was not clearly the time vortex or anything else. It was just weird. And I kind of, like seeing something like that. I would like to see the time vortex again someday, but I kind of like seeing that with the current Doctor, at least for a while. What I noticed, though, is a particular set of things that apply to me particularly, I think have been unconsciously shaping my perspective, my aesthetic reaction to the opening credits, because they are dominantly purple with a little bit of white in there, especially at the center. So they have this purple and white color scheme. And I like that. And I've been associating that with the 13th Doctor. And a while back I was watching the credits and I thought, wait a minute, I'm associating, no wonder I'm seeing a resonance between these colors and the 13th Doctor. Because as I've talked about on Mysterious World and other places, I have color grapheme like synesthesia. And so I perceive letters and numbers as having colors. And 3 is the only shape, the only letter or number that is purple for me. Oh. And 1 is clear or white. So I have been subconsciously thinking these are appropriate credits for the 13th Doctor because of the purple and white.
That's wild.
Yeah. They're in your head.
Yeah. Also, by the way, last time they said you can't keep your eyes open while you sneeze. Well, I also, in addition to having synesthesia, I have allergies. And I carry multiple handkerchiefs with me at all times because of that. And yes, you can keep your eyes open when you sneeze. I performed the experiment several times. It's really hard to do it on the first one, but it's much easier on the first sneeze, but it's much easier on any subsequent sneezes. But yes, so if you're ever being menaced by a weeping angel and you feel like you're going to sneeze, believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself and don't blink.
Yeah. Or if in a more earthly sense, if you're driving and you need to sneeze, you can maybe be safer and sneeze with your eyes open. And not
sorry, just one more thing. Jimmy reminded me about talking about the credits. Last episode we talked about how the closing credits were distorted. The music was distorted. It wasn't distorted. They took the drum beat out, or the Doctor's heartbeat. You know how they've retconned that the the Doctor's heartbeat. That was removed when the Doctor was in the angel form. So someone mentioned that online and went, "Oh, that's clever."
That is interesting. Okay. Huh. All right, well, that does it for Survivors of the Flux. We do have, as I promised, listener feedback, and I want to get to that right now. Our first feedback comes from Ted on Facebook, who wrote, "When I watched the first episode, The Halloween Apocalypse, my reaction is WTF, please pardon my French acronyms, but after listening to the podcast, I decided to rewatch the episode, and I got much more out of it. One observation that I made had to do with the Centaurons. Their appearance reminded me of the classic Who Centaurons, not the Centaurons of New Who. Could it be that they're trying to make these Centaurons more menacing, unlike Commander Strax, who plays more of a comedic role? What do you think about that?"
I think Strax plays a totally comedic role.
Yes.
Yeah. And they definitely are trying to make the Centaurons menacing.
Yes.
And
have.
Yeah. Yes, they are much more menacing, as we've seen since then. And then he says, "I thought that the fan theory about Bell and Vinder being the Doctor's parents is interesting, but I'm not sure how I feel about revealing all the secrets of the Doctor's past. Some things are better left as a mystery.
I agree.
Yeah, although I think we're going to get a lot. There may still be some mystery, but I think we're about to get a big info dump.
Yeah, I like having characters who you don't know the truth about them for years.
Yeah.
You know, like Logan in Marvel Comics. His original name was not known for decades.
Right.
And I like having mystery characters like that. And the Doctor needs to be, to a substantial extent, a mystery character.
Yeah.
That it's kind of in the name. Doctor Who. So,
Exactly.
so I hope Chibnall does not dispel too much mystery for us too quickly. I like getting, as part of mystery characters, you do want little hints and pieces over time. And I respect the Timeless Child storyline as a way of introducing more mystery into the Doctor's character. So I hope he does not immediately take it all away.
Right.
Well, this is a definite cycle in Doctor Who, because we've talked about how, you know, the Doctor's introduced in the 60s and don't know anything about him, and a little more trickles out throughout the years. And then we get to the 7th Doctor, and we got the Cartmel Master Plan, which was supposed to reintroduce a lot of the mystery again. And that then they get mysterious, and now it's trickled back out, and now they're just going to dump a whole bunch more on us. So,
and then Ted finishes, lastly, what are the odds that in episode 6, the Doctor will wave her sonic screwdriver or unplug something to reboot the universe? And I'm saying the odds are looking good on that.
There's going to be a big red switch somewhere.
Yeah. I have a feeling given how everything has been moving, we're going to have to reboot the universe.
Well, or decompress it, to use the verb that the Doctor used in this episode.
Yes. And maybe use those seeds. So Rick on Facebook writes, episode 4 was so much better than the first 3. For me, one of the best in years. Not sure how it fits in with the Flux arc, but it almost stands alone as a good, scary story. I would agree.
And we've now seen how it fits in with the Flux arc.
Exactly.
Yep. Rob on Facebook adds, this type of storytelling should have been employed since Chibnall took over.
You think?
Yeah, exactly.
I think we've all said that one at one point or another this season. And then
it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they continue with whoever the next showrunner is will continue with this serial type format going forward.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. To me, it's not so much the serial format is okay. I can go either way on that. Right. What I think is improved is the increase of the tempo. Maybe not quite this fast.
Yeah.
But I like the increase of the tempo and the lack of preachiness. Yep. Because this is so jam-packed, they haven't had time to do much preaching at us.
That's true.
And it's like,
that's true.
I'm not here for a sermon. I have church for that. Here, I'm here for an adventure story. Forget the preaching and tell me an adventure story and make it a good one. That's what I'm here for.
As I commonly joke, that's my job to preach, not theirs.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And can we get 10 episode seasons back so we don't get like 6 episodes every 2 years or so? Because that just is not enough. And last bit of feedback from Matt on YouTube, who wrote, given the cliffhanger, I was somewhat disappointed to see that the title of next week's episode is not The Angelic Doctor. A missed opportunity. It could have been a celebrity historical featuring an adventure with St. Thomas.
Yeah, and for people who may, and I appreciate the pun, for people who may not be familiar, medieval theologians tended to give each other nicknames. And kind of like the Doctor or the Master, except they all involved the word doctor, which just meant teacher. And so the Latin word doctor means teacher. And so because of his supposedly sublime angelic qualities, St. Thomas Aquinas was known, his nickname was the Angelic Doctor. But there were lots of others like the Marvelous Doctor, the Subtle Doctor, and so forth. And they would refer to each other, or historians have referred to them by these nicknames in their writings. So it would indeed have been interesting to see an episode involving Doctor Who, the Weeping Angels, and the Angelic Doctor Thomas Aquinas. Although somehow I don't know that Chris Chibnall would have been the author to give him justice.
Yes, I was going to say that would. I'm not sure that would work out the way we would hope. All right, so that does it for our feedback. We want to wrap things up by first taking a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Father Michael N., Paul B., Chris N., Deborah B., and Bradley J. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of this Chapter 5, Survivors of the Flux? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we will be discussing the final chapter in the Flux, The Vanquishers. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, you can't fight the future.